Good morning, everyone, and welcome to University Unitarian Church in Seattle, Washington. It's Sunday, September 27th, 2020, and I realized early this morning that today, exactly today, is the 39th anniversary of my ordination. So I think I'm out of my apprenticeship anyway, but it's good to be with you this morning. I'm here with my good colleague, Beth Chronister, guest musician, harpist this morning, John Carrington, Ian Loney, our tenor soloist, and our wonderful tech crew, David and Byron. After the service this morning, during the coffee hour, our Board of Trustees will host their monthly open session where they invite members of the congregation to join them for a conversation about topics that are on your mind and perhaps on their mind, just so that we might keep regular contact with all of our folks during these forced virtual times. So I invite you to join us for that after the service this morning. It is also my sad duty to report the death of Dr. Tom Rudd last week, who died peacefully at home here in Seattle, non-COVID related sickness. But we invite you to look at the Gateway and the e-news this coming week for more details about a memorial service for Tom. We send our love and our sympathy to his wife, Anna, and their daughters and families. Let us begin the service this morning. We gather today as a community of faith, and we come in search of life's meaning. All of us know despair. All of us know exaltation. Each of us bears a burden. All have moments of weakness and of strength. All sing songs of sorrow and of love. May our worship bring us strength along our way. In the presence of the sacred, may we come to know our true selves, finding a fresh impulse to love and to do good. Come, let us worship together. I invite you to join me in singing the doxology, which will appear here on the screen, and to remain standing or seated for the opening hymn, For the Beauty of the Earth.
Over and around. us lies. Source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of ear and eye, for the heart and mind's delight, for the mystic harmony, linking sense to sound and light. Source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the wonder of each hour of the day and of the night, meal and vale and tree and flower, sun and moon and stars of light. Source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of human care, sister, brother, parent, child, for the kinship we all share, for all gentle thoughts and mild. Source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise.
Last week, friends, we began a custom which we hope to continue on each of our Sunday morning worship services by introducing the offertory by one of the members of the congregation, and we're beginning with the Board of Trustees. Last Sunday, Rosemary Daskowitz, our board president, introduced it and shared a little bit about herself, and today we are fortunate to hear from Mike Kasperzak, who is the treasurer of the congregation.
Hello, I'm Mike Kasperzak. I give time and money to our congregation, and I want to tell you about the adhesive that keeps me here at UUC. I could try to convince you that it's the exquisite pleasure of being our congregation's treasurer, or that it's serving on the racial justice team. These are important to me, but they're a manifestation of something deeper. I could contend that being a UU and a UUC member makes me a better person. I hope so. I'm inclined to think this is true, but it's still a side effect. It's not why I stay. What it comes down to is that UUC is my community. We humans need community. Community isn't touristic or consumerist, here today, gone tomorrow. Covenant binds our UUC community. Basically, I commit to loving the hell out of you all beyond reason and even hope, especially when, as sometimes happens, you exasperate the hell out of me, and vice versa. This covenant stuff is hard, it's awkward, it's glorious, it's essential. UUC is worth it. So give as you are able, and please say with me, this church is a community of ourselves. Its energy and resources are our energy and resources. Its wealth is what we share. When we contribute to the life of this community, we affirm our lives within it.
To join me now in a spirit of prayer and meditation as we take a moment to quiet ourselves and center ourselves amidst the storms of our times and of our own lives. May we be granted sufficient ease to breathe deeply of this moment, this light, this miracle of now. Beneath the din and fury of great movements and harsh news and urgent crises, may we be attentive still to good news, to small occasions, and the grace of what is possible for us to be and to do and to give and to receive, that we may miss neither our neighbor's gift nor our enemy's need. May we be granted a sense of humor that adds perspective to compassion. And may we be granted gratitude that adds persistence to courage. May we be granted quietness of spirit that adds irrepressibility to hope. And may we be granted openness of mind that adds surprise to joy. That with gladness of heart we may link arm and arm with all who encourage us to follow something more of justice and joy. To these imperfect words, ill-shaped phrases, we add the silent intentions of our hearts. So may it be. Amen.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been here 10,000 years, light shining as the sun. We've no less days to sing God's praise than when we'd first begun.
It is a song I remember hearing growing up, and it is just transporting to hear it on harp this morning. Thank you. Following that musical prayer and prayerful moment that John shared, would you please join me in taking a deep breath? Settling into this moment in time, an hour stubbornly and faithfully set aside from the churning of day to day. A momentary pause to open our awareness and listen to the heart and body, to notice and tend to what is there. Approaching with curiosity and holding with compassion. My friends, whatever you bring with you on this day, both hope and despair, grief and gratitude, know that you are welcome here. We live in a tender time, shaped by vulnerability, uncertainty, exhaustion, and existential worries about what the future might hold. I know that my own imagination has led me down some despairing paths of late. And when it happens, and when I remember my practices, I sit with the blank pages of my journal and let the words and feelings flow through me, allowing myself to be surprised by the creativity that waits to emerge. My brother taught me this, how art and creativity can move a person from torment into new places. My brother is a musician. As a child, he learned piano through the Suzuki method, listening intently as a way to learn the rhythms and the notes. From the piano, he learned stand-up bass and trained in both classical and the free flow form of jazz. When he plays his bass, he curls around it, and it is as if him and the instrument merge into one. It is through his music that my brother listens to what might still rise out of despair. I remember watching him as a senior in high school. On the day he lost a dear friend in a car accident, Dave sat at the piano and began to compose music emerging from his fingertips, created from his broken heart. I heard it again this summer in the beats he mixed in the midst of the protest. Leaning in and listening intently to his own experience, living as a Black man in America, listening to the beats rising from the streets and the cadence of past prophets fighting for racial justice, he created an album that dares sing possibility within pain. One voice among a chorus calling out for change. We live in a creative universe, on a planet that is ever transforming, abundant with possibility. Just ask the mountains that surround this land, formed by volcanic eruptions and land masses colliding with one another, brimming with the geological potential to change even now. Just look out over the waters of the Sound, waters that were once locked in glacial sheets, now moving endlessly through waves and rain. Change and creativity, evolution and emergence, these are the paradoxical constants of life. And as part and product of this grand, ever-shifting creation, creativity is our birthright, and possibility our terrifying and hopeful predicament. And yet how easy it is to fall into the trap of thinking that the future is already determined and to become constricted, to lose creativity in the face of our own vulnerability. After 4 exhausting years of chaos, loss, and discord, after lifetimes of moving against stacked systems, it can be difficult to imagine that life could be different. Challenging to think in possibilities rather than be stuck in the quagmire of cynicism and the depths of grief. And yet, in this moment, as the current structures are shaking under the weight of change and challenge, opening your imagination, having faith in the yet to be, and moving boldly on behalf of that belief is exactly the kind of leadership and creativity we so desperately need. The poet Aurora Morales Levin writes about imagination as discipline in her poem, Vahavta. I offer you this excerpt. Say these words when you lie down and when you rise up, when you go out and when you return, in times of mourning and in times of joy. Inscribe them on your doorpost, embroider them on your garments, tattoo them on your shoulders, teach them to your children, your neighbors, your enemies, recite them in your sleep. Here in the cruel shadow of empire, another world is possible. Another world is possible. When you inhale and when you exhale, breathe the possibility of another world into the 37.2 trillion cells of your body until it shines with hope. Then imagine more. This act of imagination, of creation, of letting yourself become attuned to the possibilities of what's unfolding and listening attentively to what is within. This is a spiritual practice. And the arts can be a doorway to this practice. It is through music, dance, visual arts, poetry, film, and theater that new worlds are created all of the time, and underlying truths are illuminated that shake up our narratives and our assumptions. Maybe no one does this more than the creators of science fiction, who reflect on the questions of this world by creating their own imaginative and sometimes very stark realities where such questions can lead to different solutions. To quote science fiction author Ursula Le Guin, I think imagination is the single most useful tool mankind possesses. It beats the opposable thumb. I can imagine living without my thumbs, but not without my imagination. In these anxious times, whether you think of yourself as an artist or not, I would encourage you to give yourself permission to create something, to paint, sketch, pick up some crayons, sing, dance, stitch, journal, mold out of clay what you are experiencing, feeling in these strange times, as a way to pay homage, possibly to the abiding beauty of life, or to just be playful in spite of it all, to practice radical joy. Art therapy tells us that the mental health benefits alone of creating make it worthy of a time such as now. Creative visual arts have been shown to relieve stress, to express and channel feelings that defy words, and to reconnect the creator, the maker, with a sense of accomplishment and esteem. Approached as a spiritual discipline, art can become a contemplative practice, letting the constructs of time and the distractions that eat at the attention give way, and letting oneself become immersed in the present moment. As the author of The Artist Way, Julia Cameron writes, creativity occurs in the moment. And in the moment, we are timeless. Art can also be a devotional practice, an expression of love for life. Religious leader and mystic Osho states, to be creative means to be in love with life. You can be creative only if you love life enough that you want to enhance its beauty. You want to bring a little more music to it, a little more poetry, a little bit more dance. A masterpiece is not required. Just the act of showing up and giving yourself over to creation again and again until this creativity birthright finds its home within you again. Bob Ross was a teacher I sought out this last week to help me ease into the practice of creating. A painting teacher whose teaching techniques include words of gentle, sweet encouragement to the aspiring painter, Ross long held a spot on public television to guide people into their own joy of painting. I borrowed an easel from the church, laid out the many colors, and faced my canvas with some trepidation. On the screen and on my corresponding canvas, blue sky began to stretch out, filling what was once blank with an expansiveness of open heavens dotted with happy clouds. I felt bold in painting a series of mystic mountains and downright amused by how my happy little trees looked slightly deranged, actually, and a little bit bedraggled. The final product was not a mere image by any means, but it lifted my spirits, and it continues to. It might just find a place on my wall. Following the inspiration of a teacher who kindly remembered what it is like to be a learner, how vulnerable it is to learn, try something new. From nothingness, I gave myself over to imagination, thereby reconnecting with beauty and joy in spite of my worrying mind, which told me there was no time for that. And I felt possibility of the yet unknown light up like stars burning in a night sky, and I wondered, how might this become a lived practice? What else do I not know? I remember this feeling on another occasion of connecting with possibility and wanting to explore, hungry for a new practice, a new way of being. It was when I was surrounded, actually, by guides who were practiced in imagining a different path forward than the one that had been laid. I was at a convening of the No New Youth Jail campaign outside of the construction site at 12th and Alder. New to the campaign that had already been organizing for years and very fresh and new to the vision of prison abolition, I felt my mind being stretched to reimagine the justice system and to consider alternatives beyond the current carceral system that would rather cage people than heal what was broken. The community leaders and organizers there shared a bold and stunning reimagination of how the youth of King County would be supported, held by the community, and invited into restorative justice instead of punitive sentencing. They declared their readiness as community leaders and community members to support these youth rather than see them locked up, and called for the reallocation of shared resources into community-based solutions. They were painting a different future. A future that would be known not so much by the absence of a detention center, than by the presence of a community-centered approach to healing for the youth of King County, the presence of poetry, art, enough food, housing, mentorship, and peer support, the presence of a holistic and transformative justice lived out as daily practice. This is the community organizing and vision that did indeed result in a totally different plan, a totally different vision from the county several months ago, to which said it would eventually end the incarceration and detention of youth in our area. I remember on that day having my imagination stretched and feeling speechless. I had never thought to imagine beyond the walls that cage my own mind, beyond the assumptions I had absorbed, to let myself imagine a different world than one in which violence is met with more violence. To imagine a new way of relationality that is not a repetition of our racialized past, forever recreating itself in new forms. And I was left questioning what privileges had made me so comfortable as to never question the legitimacy of living in a country with the highest incarceration rate in the whole world. And at what cost was this imagined innocence? In our own city and across the nation, responding to abuses by the police, particularly as systemically enacted against Black people, there are calls for a great reimagining of community safety, of policing, and of the criminal justice system. And with the court decision this last week to side with the police in the unjust killing of Breonna Taylor to preserve the status quo and protect the powerful rather than radically reimagine justice, this has just strengthened the movement. The language and demands of these movements are painted as radical, which they are, because they aspire to get at the root of the issues endemic to violence, to criminalization and crime, to imprisonment, detention, and policing. Designed to uproot racism, to address poverty and violence, to repair relationships, and to prioritize the creation of vital systems that many communities lack. To quote Darnell Moore, author, activist, and abolition theologian, abolition is an organizing principle that is not centered only on the removal of the systems that harm us, but the process of imagining into being the life and soul-affirming tools that ought go into their place. It is a politics and practice of creation, not just erasure. Abolition theology demands that we broaden and diversify our imaginations and activate and strengthen our freedom dreams. Social justice requires a radical imagination. It requires we dream of the communities and cities we want to live in and then translate those dreams into daily practice about how we are in relationship with one another, with our institutions, with our communities and our neighbors, with our enemies. It requires that we translate those imaginations into changed policies. And as any artist or abolitionist will tell you, it takes time and discipline to stretch and free the imagination. And it takes even more time and discipline to move from that imagination into the act of creation, to bring new possibilities into the world. As lifelong abolitionist and activist Angela Davis famously said, "You have to act as if it were possible to radically transform the world, and you have to do it all the time." From imagination to creation. This is the spiritual practice of art and of activism. This past Wednesday, Racial Justice Co-Chair Kira McCoy shared their reflections on living abolition as spiritual practice and reflected on their journey towards reimagining what repair could look like from harm. And Kira asked us to reflect on this question: what are some day-to-day ways to decrease our reliance on the criminal justice system? What are some day-to-day ways to decrease our reliance on the criminal justice system? I must admit, I struggled to answer it. Struggled to translate the world awaited into the world attained, and then to find my role in it. But I believe that in times as crucial as this one, as full of potential as ours, imagination and practice must find and fuel one another. My friends, keep stretching that imagination. Keep finding the teachers and communities who dream of new worlds and practice to make it so. And then find your daily practices to bring that possibility into reality in this time of great potential. Blessed be, and amen. Would you please join now in singing our final hymn, Blue Boat Home, a song that is for sure to delight the imagination.
I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean. Still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life. port have I known? The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun, my sail, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the light of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
So we are in the season already of voting. Early voting is happening in different areas of the country. Our own mail-in ballots in Washington State will be arriving within a couple of weeks. We are 5 weeks out from the election. And if this is on your mind as much as it is on mine, I would encourage you to join me in getting involved with our efforts with UU the Vote. Steve Carlson has been enthusiastically and graciously leading up this effort and makes it incredibly easy to get involved and to start turning that imagination of a country that you might dream of into some practices of writing letters, reaching out to potential voters, and working on motivating voters and advocating against voter suppression. One of our main partners in that work is an organization here in Seattle that actually works in many states across the nation called Common Power. And Common Power has a training each Monday at noon, a Zoom call for how to get involved and get signed up to be on a state team. And tomorrow, as to follow my imagination into practice, tomorrow I will be joining on this call. And I hope that some of you, if you're able to, might join me there as well, so that the world awaited might be a world attained. This past week, Unitarian Universalism mourned the untimely passing of one of our leaders who grew up in the movement, Alondria Williams. Alondria was an activist, a community organizer with the Highlander Center, one of the founders of Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism, and for the last several years, a co-moderator for the UUA. E grew up within Unitarian Universalism, and they loved this faith fiercely, actively, always imagining and encouraging the growing edge of our potential as a people. And on this morning, we remember them and grieve with their family. Our benediction comes from Elandria. We are worthiness personified. I, you, and we are worthy and deserve a life where we are not always fighting for our existence. Imagine what we could create if we were not always in the struggle. Imagine what we could envision if we could just be let to go there. So tired of always having to resist, to fight, demanding, pushing to everyone that has the courage, the power, the ability to co-create what we want and need while rooting in what we can't lose and who we are. You are the visionary. You are the hope. You are our ancestors' dreams. No, you might not ever end up on some list somewhere, but you are on a list in someone's heart and mind. And if it's in how you move in the world so people can see by example, you are the embodiment of what we need. Thanks to all that are the embodiment. The embodiment not of productivity, but the embodiment of radical love, care, and sanctuary. It's time. Embodiment time. Embodiment, living one's values out loud. Let me every day live my values out loud. Let us every day live our values out loud. Embodying our values. Not the productivity quotient, beyond productivity, past productivity, true embodiment. Life. May it be so.